Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Neolth Ask the Experts live stream event. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Catherine Grill. I'm here with Dr. Claire Wheeler, and today we are going to be talking about the topic that you all voted for in the Neolth app, which is summer body anxiety. So it's July, it's very timely to talk about this, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Wheeler here today. Dr. Wheeler, could you introduce yourself, even though people probably already know you by now, and a little bit about this topic? What is the deal with summer body anxiety?
Hi, it's great to be back. I'm so happy to be doing another one of our live streams and be talking with you, Dr. Grell. This is an issue that, as a female growing up in the United States, has been on my mind for most of my life. And I, like many teenage girls in the 70s and 80s, was slathering on baby oil and lying under aluminum foil and doing the best I could to meet some ideal that I probably was never going to meet. So before we dive into the topic, which is super important, I just want to acknowledge the fact that this is a difficult summer for many. This is a very, very hot summer we're having now in 2023. And a lot of people are really just struggling to survive. So I really want to acknowledge that many people, this is in the context of an ongoing kind of struggle that a lot of us are having to deal with. But anyway, when I think about the pressure that comes with this whole concept of the summer body, I think there are really three major drivers of that for people. And the first one, the most obvious answer, is that when the weather gets warmer, we wear less clothing. We wear lighter weight clothing. It's a norm, it's socially normed that now maybe you can get away with wearing shorts to work, or break various other taboos in professional and work settings, as well as just our everyday lives. And so now not only are we pressured to be wearing less and perhaps wearing clothing that reveal more, but we're also seeing other people do it. Other people wearing very little clothing and showing off their summer bodies. And so that is really pushing social comparison, which is a topic we've discussed before in these videos. So there's that. There's just the exposure issue. Then there's the fact that, we're supposed to be outside and getting active and enjoying this time of year, and, playing softball and volleyball and frisbee and everything. And not everybody likes to do that. And there's also a stigma. If you don't have the perfect body, there's often stigma against even exercising, right? Like if large people go to the gym or they engage in outdoor athletic activities, sometimes they're mocked and bullied because of the shape of their body when they're actually out there trying to have a healthier body. So there's that piece as well, that suddenly there's even more pressure to be active and fit and athletic when you really aren't. And finally, a lot of the time that we get together in the summer, it's about food. And the food climate of summer is different from winter, right? We have hot dogs now and hamburgers and potato chips and picnic food. And this is not really the most nutritious way to feed our bodies. So we have sort of a triple effect that adds up to a lot of pressure for many of us to engage in a lifestyle that really doesn't come naturally to us, that is based on appearance, and also is a little bit creates a lot of cognitive dissonance, because while we're supposed to be active and athletic, we're supposed to already be fit, and we're supposed to engage in all of this food while still being skinny. So it creates a tremendous amount of anxiety and confusion for people trying to go along with this. And I can't, stop this topic without pointing out that this is a real problem, especially for Black women whose bodies have been violated, enslaved, and exploited for centuries in a variety of different settings and different ways. And that is ongoing now. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure from the intersectionality of fat stigma, racism, and sexism for Black women and other women of color. And so this affects everybody, because it affects you if you're large, if you're female, if you're disabled, if there's anything weird about your body, aside from its size, then you are subject to bullying and stigmatizing. Even aging is often seen as not okay, in the context of the summer body craze. And so most of us at some point in our lives are going to have to deal with this pressure.
Definitely. It sounds like there's a very small, window of what you're supposed to look like. I'm doing this in air quotes if people are listening to audio. And most of us don't fit in that. So it really makes you think, where did this all come from? I remember I'm a millennial, right? So growing up, seeing different magazines, they were definitely targeting young women. They would talk about summer body, are you in shape for summer body, and all that. So I can get a sense of, as a young woman, where did this anxiety come from? But what we've started to see recently is that it's not just a smaller demographic of, young women, but really, as you mentioned, lots of different types of people and intersectional identities who are struggling with this. Can you talk about that? Has it always been all of us who have been struggling with body image, or is it something that used to be young women and now it's shifted to a larger pool of people?
In my experience, I would say that it really did, I think, have its roots in the culture of teenage girls and young women. And a lot of that has to do with a history of capitalism and patriarchy in Western societies and other societies as well. And this whole concept that in order to be successful as a woman, you need to have a man, you need to get married or have a male partner, because that will give you security and validation as a woman. And so then, of course, you have to figure out how to do that, right? So the male gaze has had a lot to do with it. However, I believe that has really shifted because through social media and a variety of other changes that are more contemporary, that we see a lot more body dysmorphia and eating disorders. And these are the major areas that I get worried about with this whole thing, is that dysmorphia goes up, eating disorders go up, anxiety and depression go up around this issue. And so they are going up in young men and boys as well. They're going up in kids, little kids who are exposed now to social media, 8, 9 years old, dieting to get that summer body. I'm very good at doing research as a scholar, just like you, Dr. Grill. And when I researched this topic and I was trying to find the keywords to not have every search come up with how to get a summer body, right? I'm trying to figure out, what are the other factors? So some of the factors really are the media. And when I was young, and maybe even when you were younger, that was it. It was magazines and TV and radio, and then MTV. I remember vividly when MTV started and music videos really got that ball rolling in terms of objectifying and showing us what women who are desirable to men look like and act like and sound like. And so, all of those media. And what's interesting to me about that is Generation Z, unlike the rest of the population, they don't like capitalism. And the first time a large subset of the population, when polled by Newsweek magazine, over 50% of people under the age of 25 are anti-capitalist. And so they're not buying in as much to corporate pressure to adhere to these standards that are made up by marketers. However, they have social media to contend with. So in a way, I think the pressure is even more toxic when it's coming from who you perceive as your peers, because you have in your mind a belief, I could be like a peer, this person I see on Instagram. I could probably never be like, one of those people, Kim or whoever, but maybe I could be like that person. And that to me is really dangerous and a really unfortunate upshot that is affecting this generation of young people. At the same time, however, the fitness, diet, wellness, and other, and I say that in air quotes, industries are also continuing that push and looking for new ways to influence young people to adhere to these standards.
What an interesting statistic, and just to think about around Gen Z, which they're so cool, and the change in shifting attitudes towards capitalism. I think there's so dive into here when you were talking kind of the roots in the patriarchy and male gaze and how women are supposed to look, that I would love to dive into, and we just don't have time. But Dr. Wheeler is awesome and has lots of different videos on the app, and also blogs that we're going to be putting out on the app that you could read in the expert advice section. So you can dive into these topics more if you want to. But certainly there's been a shift from, as you mentioned, kind of traditional media to more social media. And it's a really interesting idea to think about, whether or not the pressure is coming from kind of society, or whether it's coming from individual peers, and how that might change things over time. But definitely a bit scary to hear about, younger and younger kids as young as 8 years old really dieting to get a certain body. So we've talked about, I want to shift this to a positive light, because we've talked about some of the statistics and some of the things that are going on. And I hope that you realize, if you're listening, you're not alone. This is a really widespread problem, and it's rooted in history and also different intersectional identities. But someone wants to reach me. They're so excited about this topic. They're calling me on the phone. How about we dive into the positive? What are some of your thoughts or ideas for how to overcome this anxiety, Dr. Wheeler?
Yes, I love ending on a positive note, and I love ending on actionable stuff. And this is definitely a problem with many solutions. And the solution will differ depending on who you are and who you interact with. But there are a few things, up to 5, but we might not have time for them all, but you'll see them on the blog. But the first one is really to be more mindful about how you use social media. And I know you hear this all the time, but the 3 questions you can ask yourself around this issue in particular, your body and summer and all of that. How, when, and why am I using social media? And journaling is a great tool for this. And I don't mean you have to go out and buy a special little book and magic markers. You can use the Notes app on your phone. What I think could be really helpful, and what I found helpful for myself, is if I pick up the phone to use social media, why am I doing it? What is going on right now? Am I anxious? Am I bored? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Right? So why am I scrolling? If I'm looking for information, maybe there's somewhere a better place to get information. If I'm looking for validation, maybe that's not, strangers aren't the place to go for validation. Maybe I get that from people I know and love, and learn how to get it for myself, right? So those questions. Also, how does it make me feel? You can use your Notes app. Like I don't scroll through social media, but I scroll through news sometimes, and I realize, oh my gosh, I'm just scrolling. I could then make a note. How do I feel now? How do I feel about my body? Or you could just make a couple standard questions for yourself. How do I feel about my body? Or how do I feel about what I just saw? Or just generally, how do I feel? Check in. How does your gut feel? A lot of times that's where we feel that anxiety about our power in the social world is in our gut. So, and another one is when am I logging in? Is there something else I could be doing right now? Right. So how, when, and why am I using these media? And I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just saying use them intelligently. And by intelligently, I mean by thinking about how and why you're doing it. Focus on your health and not your appearance. That's number 2. A healthy body is a beautiful body and to many eyes, but just to even get away from that, it's just about, this is the body that you're living in, and it reflects your values and your behaviors and everything else. But it is what it is, and nobody is perfect. And so, thinking about, like if I want to think about my skincare routine, I want to just think about taking good care of the largest organ in my body and learning a little bit about my skin and what makes it thrive, because taking care of my skin is probably going to make my skin look good to me as well. And so really just maybe sometimes shifting our thinking just a tiny little bit toward being healthier. Also, wear whatever the heck you want. You don't have to wear a bikini or even a bathing suit. Regardless of how your body looks, clothing is a mode of expression. It can be a mode of artistry. It can reflect your values. For example, I try to only wear natural fibers. I try to only buy clothes at thrift stores, and that reflects my values, and I feel good. It doesn't matter whether I'm wearing a bikini or a pair of jeans, because I made a mindful choice to wear this garment. So you can wear a dress to play volleyball, wear a t-shirt and shorts to swim. There are no real rules about this that you are obligated to follow. Obviously, if you're going to go to grandma's house, you might want to dress to please grandma, but aside from that, take care of your own self and show who you are through what you're wearing. And then I think the other thing is to just be prepared, because all of us can be subject to bullying and harassment, no matter what, no matter your gender, your class, anything. You can be victimized for your appearance. And so I think it's really helpful to think about that and to be prepared for it and have verbal and behavioral responses to bullying and harassment, so that you can keep yourself safe. But just to remember that if someone doesn't know you well and care about you, their opinion is probably not something that you need to base your self-esteem on and your self-respect on. that you go to the people who you love and care about you for that. And I think that's a really good place to start.
So many good tips. And I also love ending on a positive note. So I'm hearing three main things. One is being mindful of social media, which we always talk about. I know people are like, oh, I hear this all the time. But I do think it's important. Like when I went through and unfollowed certain accounts where I felt like there was kind of a negative effect on the pictures that were coming up and how I was feeling about myself, that was helpful. I also noticed it with TV shows too. Maybe this is me again being a millennial, doing a lot like on Netflix, but depending on how much the people, how much makeup they wear and what clothes they wear, like the more that they're doing, the more I notice it affects my self-esteem. So trying to find shows where people look more natural, that's helpful for me. So just being mindful of that. And I love this idea of the journaling, which you can do on Neolth, which you can do on your notes phone, however you want, of just thinking about what's that emotional reason behind the scrolling. Because, you know, we did that whole life skills series last year, the video series, which is on the expert advice section in Neolth. And that was the first life skill. Like before you can really make change, you have to have awareness of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So starting to get a sense of, oh, I'm opening Instagram because I'm bored, because I want to see what my friends are doing. Like just understanding whatever it is, why you're opening that, why you're going to different accounts, that's going to help you understand if you need to change it and then how. So I love that, just kind of building up that awareness, and then focusing on health versus appearance. I think that you could maybe come up with some sort of like mantra or saying to yourself, or even just a simple question, you know, if I'm going to be eating something today, is it because it's about me wanting to be more thin in my appearance, or is it really about my health? So just whenever you're engaging in different behaviors, like kind of reminding yourself, is it health or appearance wise? And all of this, it just seems like being your authentic self. So that's, I don't know, if I came out with anything from this talk and from your advice, Dr. Wheeler, it's like, how do I focus on, in the midst of all the stuff going around us, like how do I be more of my authentic self, and just kind of keeping that in mind throughout the day. So I know we're at the end of the talk. It goes by so quickly. Anything you want to say in closing, Dr. Wheeler?
Yeah, I didn't say those words, but really that is what I was saying, be your authentic self. And I would just say, if I walked into a pool party and saw 14 people in bikinis and one person sitting there in a Rolling Stones t-shirt and a pair of biker shorts, that's the person I'd want to go talk to, because I would feel like they were there showing up and just being themselves. And that's really, to me, interesting and attractive. So thanks again for joining us. And it's been a joy as usual.
Thank you so much for being here. So as a quick reminder, you can vote for our next live stream event in the Neolth app in the community poll. We hope to see you then. And thanks so much for being here today. Bye, everyone.